All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on Amazon Relational Database Service, or RDS as pretty much everyone calls it. It's one of those core AWS services that, honestly, solves one of the biggest, most persistent headaches for anyone building applications, actually managing the database that makes it all run.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll kick things off with what I call the database dilemma, basically why this was such a hard problem to begin with. Then we'll introduce RDS as the solution and look at the actual building blocks you use. From there, we'll dive into its real superpowers, automated availability and backups, before wrapping up with a look beyond the absolute basics.
So, to really get why RDS is such a big deal, you kind of have to remember what life was like before it. Let's talk about the absolute headache of trying to manage a database all by yourself.
Oh man, if you've been there, you know exactly what this feels like. It's that constant, nagging anxiety in the back of your mind. You're worrying about server maintenance, patching the operating system, making sure the database software itself is installed just right, and of course, you're just waiting for that dreaded 3 a.m. phone call when something inevitably breaks. It's a massive amount of work that has absolutely nothing to do with making your actual application better.
And this slide, I think, just lays it all out perfectly. Look at the left side, the old way. That's your to-do list, server maintenance, OS patching, backups, all that heavy lifting. Now look at the right. With RDS, that entire list of chores is just gone. It's handled by AWS, and that frees you up to focus on the stuff that actually moves the needle for your business, like optimizing your application and fine-tuning your database queries.
All right, so we've set the stage. We know the problem. Now let's bring in the hero of our story, Amazon RDS.
Now, the official definition is, it's fine. It talks about setting up, operating, and scaling. But here's the thing you really need to get. RDS isn't some new proprietary database you have to learn from scratch. No, it's a service that manages the popular industry-standard databases your teams already know how to use.
This is probably the best way to think about it. If you were building a house, you'd have to worry about the foundation, the plumbing, the wiring, fixing the leaky roof. But with a service department, you just move your furniture in, your application and your data, and you start living. RDS takes care of all that underlying infrastructure for you.
And this right here, this is maybe the most important concept to grasp about any managed cloud service. It's the shared responsibility model. This table just draws a really clear line in the sand. On the left, AWS handles the physical stuff, the servers, the power, the networking, plus the OS and database patching. Your job starts at the application level. You design the tables, you tune your queries to be fast, and you control who gets access to the data.
Okay, so how do you actually build one of these things? Let's break down the core components, the Lego bricks you'll use to spin up your own managed database with RDS.
It really just comes down to these three key decisions you have to make. First, the DB instance. Just think of that as your own private virtual database server sitting in the cloud. Second, the DB engine. This is where you pick the software you want to run, like MySQL or PostgreSQL. And third, the DB instance class. That's just a fancy way of saying you choose how much horsepower, how much CPU and memory you want your server to have. And here's the best part, right? You're not locked into some weird new database technology. RDS supports all the heavy hitters, the ones developers and businesses already use and trust every day. We're talking MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, and even the big commercial ones like Oracle and SQL Server. So your team can hit the ground running without having to learn a whole new system.
Okay, now we're getting to the really good stuff. I like to call these the RDS superpowers, because these are the features that directly eliminate those headaches and late-night phone calls we talked about earlier.
First step, superpower number one, high availability. AWS calls this feature multi-AZ, and it's brilliant. It all starts with your main, primary database running happily in one physical location, or what AWS calls an availability zone.
At the exact same time, RDS is keeping a perfect, up-to-the-second copy, a standby replica of your database running in a completely different, physically separate data center.
So, if the worst happens, a power outage, a network failure, whatever, RDS just automatically flips the switch. It fails over to that standby replica, and your application is back online, usually in just a minute or two. No frantic phone calls, no manual intervention. That is the 3 a.m. call killer right there.
All right, superpower number 2 is your ultimate safety net, automated backups. This isn't just for huge disasters. It's for those everyday oops moments, like when somebody on the team accidentally deletes a critical table. We've all been there.
So what does the safety net look like? Well, there's a key number to remember here, 35. RDS can automatically create and hold on to your backups for up to 35 days. But it's even cooler than that.
By combining daily snapshots with a continuous log of every single change, it lets you do something called a point-in-time recovery. That means you can literally restore your database to the state it was in at any given second within that 35-day window. It's absolutely incredible.
Okay, so our database is running, it's highly available, it's backed up, but how do we keep an eye on it? Well, RDS gives you a whole suite of tools to see what's gone on under the hood. You've kind of got these different layers of insight. You start with Amazon CloudWatch, which gives you the high-level dashboard. How busy is the CPU? How many database connections are active? If you need to go deeper, you can flip on Enhanced Monitoring, and suddenly you're seeing real-time metrics from the underlying operating system. But the real gem, for me, is Performance Insights. It's this amazing visual tool that shows you exactly what's putting load on your database so you can pinpoint slow queries in seconds. And this really brings us to the big picture, doesn't it? When you take all of that stuff we talked about, the patching, the backups, the failover management, what a lot of people call the undifferentiated heavy lifting, when you offload all that to a service like RDS, it does way more than just make your job easier. It fundamentally changes the game. It frees up your time, your team's energy, your focus. So the real question it leaves us with is this. Now that we don't have to worry about all that stuff, what are we going to build next?